Former student of mine, Q Sky, Johnny Gadamowitz, play-by-play broadcaster for Cornell basketball on ESPN Plus, as we preview the Orange and the Big Red. And Johnny, great to catch up with you again. How are you doing?
Hey guys, what's going on? Appreciate you having me. Happy early Thanksgiving. Hope everything's going well up in the 315.
Yeah, well, this basketball team is, causing some people to pull their hair out. 3 close wins and then 2 close losses down in Brooklyn at the Barclays Center. Now they got Cornell coming in tomorrow night. And this seems to be a dangerous Cornell team. I watched a lot of that game last night. They made 13 threes against Iona, 4-2 on the year. They score a lot of points, Johnny. I mean, what can you tell us about this team through 6 games? What should we expect?
Yeah, it's an exciting Cornell team, to say the least. Syracuse fans will probably remember last year's matchup in December between the Big Red and the Orange. And it's a little bit of a different looking Cornell squad this year. First-year head coach Brian Earl departs. He's down at William & Mary now. His associate head man from last year, John Jakes, former Cornell player, is now running the show. From a philosophy standpoint, from a schematic standpoint, very similar systems. This is a Cornell squad that, if you know anything about Cornell basketball, you know they like to play fast. They like to play a lot of guys. They almost have hockey line change type subs is what it feels like at times. And it's more of the same, just because it's a new coach and some new pieces on the roster, so to speak. They did lose 3 of their top 5 scorers from last year, transferring elsewhere with the Ivy League, not having grad eligibility. So a new time, but also a lot of the same, because that identity has really remained pretty similar.
We mentioned 4-2, and they dominated Iona last night. What happened in the 2 losses? Both losses were double-digit losses. They lost by 10 to Robert Morris. They lost by 16 to LaSalle. What went wrong in those games compared to obviously what went right in the victory?
Yeah, I think it starts at the defensive end. You look at the 2 losses, the one to LaSalle and obviously the one to Robert Morris at home last week. They still were in the upper 70s as far as points go. So this is a team that's going to score. They do not take up very much time in the shot clock whatsoever. It's rare you get it down to even below 12, 13 seconds. They want to maximize possessions and play that analytics game of, look, 3 is worth more than 2. But to answer your question, Steve, I think you look at the 2 losses, and it was really just the defense that was lacking a little bit. You can't really slow Cornell down. You kind of just have to embrace it and almost kind of beat them at their own game, so to speak. And I think in the 2 games that did not shake their way, you saw that from LaSalle. You saw that from Robert Morris. 2 kind of almost puzzling losses in a sense, because they did take down Samford, a tournament team from a year ago that won the SoCon. So this is a team that has shown the ability to win gritty games. You mentioned their performance, 13 threes against Iona on the road last night, but kind of similar to Syracuse, where you're a couple weeks in, you can zoom out, and it's still too small of a sample size with kind of these mixed bag of results.
I'm sure you've had a chance to watch Syracuse this season. What stands out to you about this team, and what do you think is Cornell's biggest concern as they go up against the Orange tomorrow night?
I'm interested to see how the battle down low factors in. Cornell's big man, Guy Ragland Jr., is someone who can shoot and can really space the floor. He's not super big in terms of stature, but from a Syracuse standpoint, I've been really impressed with the play of Eddie Lampkin. I'd be curious to see how much Eddie Lampkin we see tomorrow night, because Guy Ragland Jr. tends to have his best games against the more traditional bigs that just hang out in the post and try to dominate on the interior. I could see Wednesday being a Jair Davis game, just that, little more adept, athletically big that can hang with Ragland Jr. on the perimeter. But Cornell is going to try to backdoor you to death. They're going to shoot the threes, but they can also get to the rim. So I think defensively, from a Syracuse standpoint, this is going to be a unique opponent in that they are going to have to be able to not only guard the interior, but worry about the perimeter as well.
Yeah, and along those lines, I mean, we've seen this Syracuse team struggle in the man-to-man, at least in those first 3 wins. They struggled to keep opposing guards in front of them, and then we saw them go down to Brooklyn, and they dabbled in the zone a little bit, and they kind of got Texas out of sync in that second half by going to a little bit of zone. Do you think we'll see, a change tomorrow with Adrian Autry and his approach to this game? In that, do you think we will see, both zone and man, or are you concerned from SU's perspective of being able to guard this Cornell team, I guess, straight up in the man-to-man?
It's a great question. I think from a pure athleticism standpoint, I mean, look, from a recruiting standpoint, Syracuse is going to have guys that maybe are a little bit faster, maybe are a little bit taller. And how do you beat the zone? I mean, you shoot over the top of it, right? So not to say I don't think we'll see any of it, but I think Red Autry and his company and his coaching staff is probably going to hang their hats on man-to-man defense come tomorrow night, just because you look at it on paper, one-on-one matchups with a lot of these guys, you tend to lean advantage Syracuse, but that's not to say, look, this is going to be a game of runs, right? Cornell goes on 8-0, 10-0 runs like other teams go on, 4-0 or 6-2 runs. So I think it's going to be one of those games where you recognize that. You recognize that there's nothing you can do to really change that. You almost kind of just hope that you can go punch for punch. And if that means changing things up defensively to try to just keep Cornell on their toes as best you can, then yeah, I don't think that's unrealistic at all.
Yeah, I mean, we thought going into, the Colgate game, for instance, Youngstown State, we thought, well, Syracuse has the edge in athleticism, and then, those guards, I mean, the best player on the floor, was on the opposing team in the Colgate game, certainly. So it'll be interesting to see if they're able to keep Cornell's guards in front of them. In terms of this Cornell team as it goes into the Ivy League schedule, and I know the conference schedule is still a little bit off here, but what are your expectations? What are the expectations for this Cornell team in conference play? Are they going to be a major player this year in the Ivy?
I don't see any reason to think why not. You look at the past couple of years, and they have pretty routinely punched their ticket to the Ivy tournament 2 of the last 3. For fans who might not be super familiar, it's not all 8 teams; it's only the top 4, right? So that's goal, and that's step number 1 in the John Jakes era, so to speak, is to make sure you keep up those really what have been averages over the past couple of seasons, and making sure that you're playing basketball beyond the regular season. Do they have a shot at a conference title? I mean, look, you get to a 4-team tournament and anything can happen, right? Particularly with the way this team feeds off momentum, with the way they can kind of catch fire and carry that game in, game out. Look, I don't think any people are going to sit there and say they're the favorite in the Ivy League. Obviously, you have a couple of really stout programs in Princeton and Yale that have gotten on the radar of plenty of college basketball fans over the past couple of years. But no, you get there, and look, they'll certainly be there in Ivy League play down the stretch. I'd be surprised if we're turning the page to, mid to late February and they have plenty of ground to make up. I think they'll go stride for stride with most of the top dogs in the conference. And then we'll see, once you get to, Ivy Madness time, who knows what could happen.
All right. And then just lastly, before we let you go, Johnny, what is your outlook going into tomorrow? What is your prediction for this game inside the Dome?
I think Syracuse needs a win. I think it's something like 43 straight times that Syracuse has beaten Cornell head-to-head, which reminds me of the Colgate number from a couple of years ago. I actually did that game on student radio, and the saying was, the last time Colgate beat Syracuse, Jim Boeheim was still in high school. So a similar kind of breakdown, I guess you could say, here in terms of the head-to-head department. But I think Syracuse probably squeaks it out. I do expect a close game. I wouldn't be shocked if, you're in the under 8 in the second half and you've got a real neck and neck tight affair. But just given the way the Brooklyn tournament went with, the Orange kind of right there knocking on the door, but unable to put the icing on the cake, so to speak, I think this is, I don't want to call it a get-right game, but I think this is a game where if Syracuse goes out there, they execute, they prepare, and they're ready for sort of what the Big Red bring to the table, no reason to think they can't defend home court on Thanksgiving Eve.
Yeah, I think it's one of those cases that if this team has improved, this Syracuse team, let's see it. We think they got better down in Brooklyn, and now we got to see it against another non-conference opponent here inside the Dome. Johnny, great catching up with you. Thanks so much for coming on. Happy Thanksgiving, and hopefully we'll chat again soon.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, guys. Happy Thanksgiving. Really appreciate it.
All right, Johnny Gadamowitz joining us here on the show. And with that, we'll take a timeout. Phone lines open the rest of the way from here on out. 315-437-7644. Yes, Paulie.
And if you want to go to the Cornell game, I'm not going to ask you questions about Superman.
No. Christopher Reeve went to Cornell.
Yes. Just caller 5, right?
Making it easy.
That sounds nice. Caller 5. Right now, you're going. Syracuse, Cornell. God forbid you have to do any work for anything. Just be caller 5. 315-437-7644.
You just didn't want to come up with another question.
No, I did yesterday. Everybody's scared of questions. And it was just easy.
It was easy.
Who played Superman?
It was easy. I didn't know there were multiple options. I thought it was like he's Superman. Christopher Reeve.
Like 3 Superman.
I know, but he's Superman. Like it's like, I mean, you know.
Like me, I'm Superman. Like Chance Westry, Superman. There you
go.
Superman.
There you go. Yeah. All right. Let's take a time out. We will wrap up hour number 1 on the other side. We're back after this on ESPN Radio.